that's so countercultural. Who would humiliate themselves to show how much love they have? And it may seem scary at first, but it becomes more amazing when we realize that the motives of God are good ones, that He desires to bring us back to Him through Jesus. Another thing that's really encouraging as we focus on this portion of the parable is that the father still sees the younger son as his son. In verse 24, he uses the words, "this son of mine." He doesn't identify the son for what he does, but for who he is. And I think that illustrates this spiritual truth, that God sees you as who you are and defines you as who you are. And He accepts you just as you are. That you don't have to do anything to gain His acceptance. We live in a society where we are constantly defined by what we do or how other people perceive us. It's easy for us to hear things like, "You're not good enough, you're not tall enough, you can't do this like this next person." I know in my journey as a medical student, sometimes things will pop in my mind like, I'm not as intelligent as my classmate, or I wish I could provide the same type of response that he did, or I can't feel the carotid pulse as well as this guy does. But all this stuff, that ultimately impacts who we end up talking with, based on what they do, based on how we perceive them. And all these social barriers end up coming into play, and we prevent ourselves from talking with other people because of those barriers. But we see in this parable that the father is not concerned about social barriers when he sees his son. He's willing to embrace his son despite what he is doing. God does not care about our social barriers. He'll meet you as you are, regardless of what other people think of you. This begs the question, well, who exactly are we? And I think we have to go all the way to the beginning of Scripture. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, when God is creating the world, and when He's creating human beings, He says, "Let us make man in our image." We are people. All of us are created in God's image. And what does that mean exactly? That means that every single one of us is worthy of dignity, honor, and respect, that we all have value. God sees you as one that is created in His image. And there's nothing that we can do to change that. Just like how the things that the Son didn't change the fact that the Father saw Him as His Son. It didn't change the fact that He was still His Son. If there's one thing that I want all of us to take away from this sermon, what I believe is the fulcrum of this entire sermon, this is what I want you to take away from it. That all of us in this room are created in God's image. We all have a dignity, a value, and an honor that no one, not through their actions, not through their words, can ever take away from you. And that is found in Scripture itself. I love that. We think about this part as a whole, and we see that it shows a God that is passionately in love with us and accepts us as we are when we come to Him. That He runs to us when He sees signs, no matter how small, of us coming back to Him. And that's a powerful sign of hope for me personally. This explains why I'm a Christian. I'm not a Christian because I'm a perfect person. And I think many of you in this room can attest to this. I'm not perfect. But what really appeals to me about Jesus is His unconditional love for me. And what I believe is His unconditional love for all of you in this room. The question then becomes, how exactly do we respond to just being presented this image of a loving Father, when we also consider the fact that we're painfully aware of the human condition and how we can screw up so often in our lives. And in order to do that, we turn back to the final part of the parable, Luke chapter 15, verse 24. I'll just read the rest of it to you. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him, "What was going on?" "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, All these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even young goats so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father says, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So I think the first observation we can make from this part is that the older son is pretty ticked. He's not a happy camper for a lot of reasons. He's aware of what his younger brother has done, how he humiliated the family, how he acted disgracefully, and he's stunned at how his father is throwing the greatest party ever for his younger son. I can only imagine the dialogue that must have taken place when this servant comes over. He's like, yo, your younger brother is back. Great. No, but guess what? Your father is like throwing the biggest party for him ever, and he killed the fattened calf for him. And the older brother's like, say what? No, I mean, like, I want to put this in context. Like, back then, you don't kill the fattened calf for nothing. I mean, this is like the biggest celebration ever. Think of the best party that you've ever been to and multiply it by infinity. And that, like, gives you an idea of how big of a party this father was throwing for his younger son, despite what the younger son did. But the older son is trying to figure out what's going on. He can't understand why the father is doing what he's doing. And he's pretty angry at his father. I think we get an indication that this differs radically from how he perceived his father. Based on the language that he uses when he's talking to his father, he probably saw his father as a pretty harsh guy, saying something like, I've been slaving for you. That's like me going up to my father after mowing the lawn and saying, I've been slaving for you. Like, that just doesn't add up. But that's how this son viewed his work. And he points to the fact that he feels like he has been a good son, but has not yet received such treatment. He's probably like, why aren't you throwing a big party for me? I've been faithful to you for the past couple of years. And he just really thinks that this is so unfair. And I would assume, and I know for me at least, this initially strikes me as really unfair. Because I think we all want people to get what they deserve, especially when they've done something wrong. And this brings up the concept of justice. Now I want to say that it's not wrong to desire justice. Justice is a very godly desire. And I don't want to make it seem as if our God is not a God of justice. Christians believe in a God who is aware of the injustice of this world. The God who sees all the famine, all the suffering, the homelessness, you name it. Everything that's wrong in this world, that he sees it, and he's saddened by it, but he is ready to make things right, and he's ready to deal with evil the way it should be dealt with. We serve a God of justice. But we are also dealing with a God that is full of so much grace, who desires to extend it to all of the people on this earth. What exactly is grace? Well, grace is when you receive something that is undeserved. The fact that God accepts us as we are, and is willing to forgive us and work with us due to the sacrifice of Jesus, in spite of what we have done, in spite of all the wrong things we have done, that is a sign of grace. This God of grace, I think, contrasts with the message of God that we sometimes get in this society, that he's a harsh ruler that's